For plebs, by plebs, dropping the Bitcoin-only signal. Pleb Underground. Welcome everyone to the Pleb Underground.
Pleb Underground, the 91st bout, still independent, won't bow for clout. I still run trips, fade, and hit my stride out. Ultimate confidence when you suicide doubt. Eye contact for A+ tension. It's exact for her attention. It's been a while since I got left on red. Gonna be a while till I get left on red. Carpets, left on, read the rules, invented a few. Still rep orange, not red or blue. Too smart to break into Yale. Mock those who break into Yale locks. Those who can't break can't regale docs. Those not awake, use a mailbox. Number one, Bitcoin rhymer, it ain't debatable. Perhaps one day I'll be so rich, unrelatable. Sign the TX, ID her. This one's alive, watch the beeper. We say please verify, don't trust. The bread and circus unless you're the crust of society, but they still haven't sussed what we engraved in steel and written in rust. Another week, you got each prequel. I'm the one, Rock, Einstein, ain't no MC equal. I'll be writing forever, past when they clapped. My present is my gift to you, fully wrapped. I run the lightning, it's sweet like eclair. Payment services, not fiat like Square. The irony a lot lost when we send it to Zell. Big Don from BTC Policy, or couldn't you tell?
Absolute fire. That's right, everybody. Welcome back. Joining us today, fellow Bitcoiner and co-founder of the Bitcoin Policy Institute. We've got David Zell joining us. David, thank you so much for joining us on the Pleb Underground, man. It's awesome to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sweet. All right. Let's dive into it. We are going to move on over to the numbers.
Yeah, the numbers, of course, brought to us by Time Chain Stats and Time Chain Calendar. What do the numbers look like this week, Phil?
At the time of this recording, the block height is 847,925. The Bitcoin fiat exchange, 65,498 and change. Big Macs to BTC, 12,717. That's right, guys. You're getting like 1,000 less Big Macs this week. 1,000 less Big Macs. It's a lot less crap. Anyways, total public lightning capacity, 5,090. The fastest fee, 45 sats per VByte. Moscow time, 1526. I mean, I still have this bear market vibe. I feel like everybody's still upset. You know, you go on Twitter, 65K
I saw someone quote
dead.
TC. Did you see that? Apparently TC said it's a cocaine bear market. It's not a bull market. It's a cocaine. I haven't seen this film, Cocaine Bear, right? But I know what you mean. Like it's like. It just like we're not really. It's not really taking off yet, right? Like I think this is the year of sideways, and some people get impatient and then get excited and then realize maybe it's not happening immediately, and then they get it's like just zoom out a bit, guys, chill out. Like stop focusing on price.
I think a lot of people are mad at Dr. Jeff. I think a lot of people are mad at Dr. Jeff with his bull crab theory. And in all fairness, I appreciate TC's Cocaine Bear much better. It sounds more fun. I mean,
I named Dr. Jeff Dr. Bear originally, and I'm pleased that he's kind of now shrugged that off a little bit. But it was notable that he went back to working, being a doctor, not just running a fund and writing something for Bitcoin Magazine.
David, what are your thoughts on the? What's your preference? Have you heard Dr. Jeff's bull crab theory, and what do you think of the Cocaine Bear? Which one do you prefer?
Well, I thought that Cocaine Bear was a movie based on Walton's time in university. So I'm sort of shocked to hear that he doesn't know what that is. I don't know anything about the crab stuff. It was interesting to see the Bitcoin price. Last I checked, it was like 70. And then past couple days on Twitter, everybody's been tweeting such that when you pulled it up, I kind of thought we were going to be in the 50s again, or like low 60s. So I was kind of just like amused to see that it's 65 or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. It's been a weird market because like wasn't that long ago that you were buying sats at like 17,000, 18,000, 19,000 US dollars per Bitcoin. And it's like, nobody seems to really care that we're like 3x plus from that. So
Right, like the old high is
bizarre.
now the new floor, right?
Yeah. People just yes, people get
Also, I
acclimated really
prefer
quickly.
Layla, like if we're talking like Eric Clapton songs.
Yeah, I think people just get acclimated to things really
Good
quickly.
take. Yeah, exactly. And people get bored, right? It's like somehow like I don't know, something burns out, you know, in our brain, and we're just like, you get to this point, you just get tired. And I think that what's also interesting is that for people who have been in this space for a little while, you really, you just don't give a shit. So like you've got these other people that are all excited, and you know they're seeing this, and it's like it's not doing what it's doing, so like they're getting emotional, and it's like, look, you just need to zoom out. You know, like this
You
is
also
just
have to
another day.
remember the people that Bitcoiners supposedly have lower time preference, right, than maybe the rest of the population. But like of Bitcoiners, the ones that spend a lot of time on social media probably don't have the lowest time preference, and so it's perhaps not that unsurprising that those are the ones that, you know, fail to zoom out on price at times.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. All right, we're going to take a look at our first numbers article. All right, so Walton brought us this. Let's see here. The account at Bury Tracker, True Inflation Explained. And I think that this is very fitting for this week because we did have the FOMC meeting, and we heard Jerome Powell say words. There were many words. Like, you know, like Donald Trump would say they were the best words. I don't know if they were the best words. They definitely weren't great words. They were just a bunch of random words. But I'll tell you what isn't words, which is inflation. Okay, and this is something that we all feel. And let's take a look at this little video here that Walton provided, because it looks like it's going to be an interesting chart.
That's the cost of living crisis. Suddenly we went up from prices being around there to prices being there. And you don't really see that in this data, okay? Because inflation is really just measuring the difference between that and that. And if you look at those two lines, you're talking about a 2.3% change. That's the number we're talking about today. But for a lot of people, it's not about that. It's about the difference between this and that. And when you look at the difference between this and that, that's 20%. And I think that's the dichotomy here between these inflation numbers where it looks normal and this, which is really not normal at all. That's the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, David, you looked amused.
Yeah, man, I just want to see that chart, like, you know, with 30 years, you know, minus on the x-axis. It's like,
even though he cherry picked those numbers, even though he cherry picked that chart, it's pretty awful, right?
yeah, no, it's pretty awful.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
I think this is the people reporting the news realize that like they're being lied to, or that I don't know why do journalists have terrible understanding of data? Like, I feel like this is a thing, right? It's a plague of. I mean, maybe it's just that, you know, if you're good at numbers, you don't like writing, and you know.
Maybe they're not incentivized though. Maybe they're not incentivized,
too,
right? Like that's. I mean, you know, we had Descentra Suze on last week, right? And you know, she kind of gave us some clues into, you know, like when you work directly for those agencies, right? Those news agencies, there's a certain framing, right, that you are told to implement. So.
Yeah, or even like an implicit framing, right? Like I think often the case is, you know, it's less like top down, you know, conspiracy theory where like every writer is given some narrative to shill, but it's like this sort of embedded like institutional narrative, like where the incentives for you as a writer, like you write something and then there's a decision, it's going to get published or not. And so even without this like formal framework of like you need to write X, Y, and Z, you sort of get habituated to whatever the meta framing that the owners of the publication want. And so, you know, if I write X, I'm going to get published. If I write Y, my editor might tell me to pound sand. And so I think that's another big like component of it as well, is like people just sort of orient themselves to the institutional view without even being told to.
I think that's a very good point, and it kind of brings up the issue of like norms enforcing behavior, right? Like you just said right there, like that becomes like a norm for that corporation. And then of course you want your work to get published, because if your work isn't being published, then they're not keeping you around. So it's a very slippery slope. Individual narratives are so, like, it's interesting, right? It's simple, but it is incredibly complex throughout all the different facets of our daily lives. So, and it
also
kind
just
of
a lot
creates
of
these blind spots, you know?
right. Yeah. Well, it's also a lot of like talking. It's also a lot of like talking past each other, right? Like we have this like very sort of strict construction of like what inflation is, like measured by CPI, and so there's, of course, I'm sure you guys have talked about this before, but like CPI is sort of nonsense.
Yeah,
it is what it is. It measures what
fake.
What it measures, right? To say
there is no
inflation
bigger lie than CPI.
Right. So it's like, I think another big component of this is that your average person thinks about inflation, in terms of their weekly grocery bill, and, economists and, sort of like, what's the word? The sort of institutionalist commentary on inflation has very little to do with your Walmart receipt, and has everything to do with, the numbers on the spreadsheet, that kind of constitute the consumer price index.
It's a very good point. And that it's just a massive disparity, right? Like that's really what it is. All right, we're gonna move on to our next numbers article, because I know this is not hopeful. We need some hope. So you know what? I figured with these numbers, we're gonna sprinkle in some hopium. Walton will appreciate this. I'm just kidding. No, he won't. But that's okay. All right. Luke Broyles. That's right. So he did this whole big long thread. Michael Saylor, savior of the universe. Boom, Bitcoin, 70 million. That's right. Saving all of our lives. We love him. Okay. This tweet right here. Okay. Tweet number 8. Everyone gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve. True. Michael reflected on how he dismissed Bitcoin at $892 to only deserve buying it at $9,500. I know that feeling. Anyways, a lot of us do. He then said Bitcoin is, $950,000. People will try to wait for it to crash to 700,000, and then BTC would go to 8 million. All right, guys. So that's what's happening. We're going to 950K, going back to 700,000. We're waiting for 700,000, and then we go from 950 to 8 mil. Those are hopium numbers. I don't know. This stuff, it's like I can't help but kind of make fun of it, because it's just like all of this stuff is just throwing anything at the wall to see what sticks. And then you'll see eventually at some point, right? One of these numbers that they throw out there is going to be correct, and everyone is going to just fucking hoist whoever said those numbers up on their shoulders and, proclaim them the fucking seer of things.
I think Trump's now talking about Bitcoin, right? And apparently when he was in office, he spent a lot of time talking about how, the stock market went up in price, and it was all, all his responsibility. And it'd be interesting to see, if at some point, we see Bitcoin moving, and Trump talking more about Bitcoin, him taking credit for it. Obviously not being true, but like that actually, may actually drive it higher.
Yeah.
And then maybe, who knows, maybe then Trump's in power forever because Bitcoin keeps mooning, and
they just change everything so that you have a dictator here.
The like Trump cycle effect. I don't know what you call it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're definitely going into some weird dystopian realities. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Who knows which one we end up having?
It's probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen. But do we really think it's going to be the president It's funny. I joke that the current president doesn't know he's president, but someone said to me the other day that that it's just that's the only thing that he knows. Like, he knows he's president, but he doesn't know anything else.
See, I like to imagine that he actually has the best life of anyone on the planet, because
it's like the
every
Truman
single
Show,
morning
you're president.
he wakes every single morning he wakes up and is told, it's like he's told for the first time that he's the president of the United States. And then every single day, he just gets to have that incredible, who am I? What's happening? Oh, sir, you're the president.
Like inverse Groundhog Day.
Inverse ground. Every single day he gets to be told for the first time that he's the president of the United States. It's like how I like to kind of imagine it. I think that's sort of cute.
So is he like Drew Barrymore in 50 First Dates? You know, like, I don't know if you ever saw that terrible movie, but like, that's, you know, every single day they have to retell her life because she has no idea what happened. It's terrible.
It's like Memento.
Like that. Yeah, Memento, of course. Yeah.
The other comparison. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, I picked
like
the dumbest movie.
The tattoo on the forearm. It's like, you are the president.
I'm not gonna lie though, it's pretty cringe to watch. It's pretty cringe to watch. To see like those clips, right? You know, of like him.
I like the one with the shaking the hands, dude. Didn't we play that last week? Was that when he like forgets that like someone, like he shakes some guy's hand, and then like the guy shakes the next guy's hand, and then goes past Biden, and Biden's like, "Hey, why don't you shake my hand?" Like you just like happened like 3 seconds before.
It's pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the numbers, and we're going to move it on over to the Fireside Chat. The Fireside Chat is brought to you by Proof of Ink. Check out our awesome gear at proofofink.com and use the code PlebUnderground for 5.8% off absolutely awesome gear. Check it out. We got the brand new fuck shit coins. That's right, guys. That's fuck shit coins at proofofink.com and use the code PlebUnderground for 5.8% off. Welcome back, everyone, to the Fireside Chat. That's right. We are joined by the co-founder of the Bitcoin Policy Institute, David Zell. And David, man, obviously, we're super thrilled that you're here to join us, and I want to dive right into it. BTC policy. Tell us, give us the overview. What are you guys doing there? Let's start with that.
Yeah. So we started BPI in January of 2022. And we've kind of changed and evolved a lot since then, but the kind of core idea has like sort of remained the same. Yeah, I'm gonna sort of like structure this because I was actually just working on a deck, but I kind of think that there are like five things, like five sort of beliefs that constitute like this organization. The first is that properly leveraged, I think Bitcoin is going to, well, first of all, I think Bitcoin's going to make the world a better place net. Like that's, I guess, kind of the implicit premise. But I think properly leveraged, like the value of Bitcoin will uniquely accrue to the sort of economic and geostrategic interests of America and liberal democracies, assuming they play their cards right. There's also a chance that they royally fuck that up. But I kind of think that that is a plausible sort of path. I think, secondly, that a Bitcoin-friendly regulatory environment is really, really helpful. I don't want to say necessary. I think that there's totally sort of branches of the future where, like, I guess I don't want to be one of these people saying, oh, if the US government doesn't give Bitcoin the seal of approval, it stops. I don't think that's true at all. But I also think that for a ton of reasons that I'm not even sure are worth enumerating, America being Bitcoin friendly is like quite good for the development of the network. I think that to get to and secure that Bitcoin friendly regulatory environment over the long run, the governments have to believe those first two premises. Like, I don't think that campaign donations and I don't think that lobbying are sufficient to engender that outcome in like a long-term and stable way. I think people have to genuinely believe that Bitcoin is good for them and good for the world. And so, fourth is I think the government is comprised of inherently persuadable individuals. It's not a monolith. It's just guys and girls doing their best. And like anybody, whether you work at a coffee shop or whether you work for the White House, you're a human being who's persuadable. And fifth and finally is, BPI is, I think, the best positioned organization to, advance that view, to persuade those people and to engender those beliefs. So those are kind of like the five theses that I guess went into starting, a DC focused Bitcoin think tank. But I guess more practically, like on the ground, what we do is find, academics and credible researchers, people who will be taken seriously by a sort of like fiat DC audience. And we support them to write about Bitcoin and become sort of champions of Bitcoin, in Washington. So we started with like, I think 8 or 9 fellows on the roster. Now we've got, I think, like 18. So we recruit these people, we platform them, we finance the production of research, we spread those ideas and the conclusions of our research via one-on-one meetings, like panel discussions, digitally. And then the big thing we do every year is, the Bitcoin Policy Summit, which we've done for 2 years in a row now, where we bring in human rights activists, developers, Bitcoin industry leaders, senators, people from universities, NGOs, other think tanks, and we do a full day on Capitol Hill, essentially just making the case that I had sort of mentioned above, right? That Bitcoin net is quite good for humanity. Like that is kind of the through line of BPI. And again, the view is that nobody's going to care about getting regulation for Bitcoin right if they think it's just some dumb, stupid, libertarian, speculative trinket. Like you can pay lobbyists all you want, you can send Trump or Biden all the sats that you want, but nobody's going to give a shit about this unless they, give a shit about it. So I kind of view our work like we're not lobbyists. I hate that. Like we're often, oh, you guys do Bitcoin lobbying. Like, no, we don't. I think our work may make it easier for a lobbyist to do their job. But really what we are doing at its core is making the best, most buttoned up case that we can that the growth of Bitcoin is good for humanity.
How do you maintain ethical behavior while being paid by David Bailey?
David, if you're watching this, you owe me a lot of money.
Oh, he's watching.
He actually does watch
David.
our show.
Yeah.
We've gotten shit before, so don't worry. He already doesn't like us.
He
does like
Dave,
us. He's quite to give me money.
Debatable. It's debatable.
David is like a dear friend. BPI wouldn't have existed without him kind of taking a big bet.
Can you tell this origin story? Because I feel like I like this. He like bribed you to like not go to the Ivy League, like and create this instead. Is that right?
Well, sort of, not quite. I hadn't gotten in anywhere, but I was interning for David several years ago, and my plan was to go to law school. And David basically just brought me into his office and was like, what do I have to do to get you to not go to law school and do something in the Bitcoin space? Because at first it was like work for Bitcoin Magazine. I didn't really want to do that. And I was like, look, I'm just going to go to law school and then let's reconnect in a couple of years. And, maybe there's cool stuff for me to do. And long story short, David made a very compelling case that was not a prudent decision and kind of just gave me a wish. He was just like, what would it take for you to abandon your current life plan and do anything you wanted in the Bitcoin space? And I kind of immediately was like, I want to start a Bitcoin think tank. And so David was just like, cool, like you can work out of the Bitcoin Magazine office, while you're putting it together, we'll pay you a salary. You don't have to do anything for us. You can just kind of cook on this idea. And, if it takes off, great. And if it doesn't, go to law school. So that's sort of the origin story. David is not really that involved in BPI, especially over the past year, as his ambitions have become more sort of politics, right? Like,
well, it's funny because you say the point of BPI is that you don't have to fund campaigns directly, and I'm here.
I think David likes
David's doing both, bro. He's like, I'm gonna.
Yeah. I think David likes to hedge. I mean, what I will say about David, and I think what makes him just such an incredible person, is when I finished explaining the original pitch for BPI, he was like, "That's really fucking stupid, and I don't think it's gonna work. But I'm going to fund you to do it because you might be right."
I feel like he says that to a lot of people.
Yeah, and so I mean, yeah, David is at this point more of a friend. In the early days, he was certainly involved, but for legal reasons, I haven't been able to talk to him about really anything that he's been doing. We're a 501c3, we're nonpartisan, we don't do election stuff. And so once David kind of went down his current path, we kind of put some pretty meaty like firewalls, in place. And I can't say David has ever once tried to influence the stuff that we do. He disagrees with like BPI fellows on Twitter. Regularly calls me a moron. But I think that if we were at this point dependent on David to exist, and if David were trying to decide what BPI does, well, there would be no way to maintain the ethics, and this wouldn't work. But I'm just really grateful that that's not the case.
So, how do you fund things now? The non-lobbying work.
It's kind of a combination of things, right? But it's pretty much just Bitcoiners who think what we're doing is worthwhile. So it just sort of depends. Like sometimes it's a company sponsoring an event that we do. Other times it's just like some anon just like drops us some Bitcoin and with no note or like nothing. Like 2 weeks ago, somebody sent us like, I think it was like $100,000 in Bitcoin, didn't leave any contact, no note, no, I want you to do this, just send us sats. And so, we apply for grants. We have like a decent amount of kind of small dollar donations, like people read an article and, send us some money. It's a combination of just sort of pitching and doing cool things. And our whole thesis has always been that like, if we add value, people will fund this. And if we don't get funded, it means we weren't adding value. So I don't really sweat the fundraising stuff too much. If we stop existing, it'll be because the Bitcoin community decided we don't need to exist. And I would be sort of at peace with that if that's how this played out.
Well, let's be honest, right? If that's the case, it most likely means we've won. So to a certain extent, right? It kind of means we won. So
do you view your work as helping Bitcoin, or do you view your work as helping the United States in regards to Bitcoin? Because from my perspective, it's like a lot of kind of policy stuff should be irrelevant when it comes to the kind of running of the Bitcoin network, and I think it largely is. Where I see it as being more relevant is around, I guess, Bitcoin industry, and then it's about is that going to be in that country, or if it's not, then it's going to be somewhere else. So actually, this is really all about benefiting a country rather than Bitcoin. So David, are you serving Bitcoin, or are you a statist?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that the concise answer to the question is that what we do is inherently both. I think you've already kind of explained like why it is beneficial to America. Like, if we convince America to hodl the Bitcoin that it has, it's like we don't need to get into like why that's beneficial. I would sort of push.
I was thinking more about like regulations around energy and mining and things like this. How like the US has been quite pro mining, whereas elsewhere, maybe where they still have cheap energy, they're not so pro mining.
Yeah, the mining stuff, I don't know. Like if you take a long-term view, I do sort of think that like obviously energy prices more so than regulation are going to wind up being just like the most critical thing for where miners are, say 30 years from now, right? But I do think there's like an interesting thread here, which is like, to what extent does Bitcoin friendly regulation, or maybe better put, the absence of like anti-Bitcoin regulation in the United States do for the proliferation and like health of the network? And I think there's like two kind of separate questions here. One is like sort of the TikTok next block thing. Like, does Bitcoin need American approval to TikTok next block? No, obviously not. But there are some really, really decisive advantages to the Bitcoin network in a world where America is like chill with it. We have the deepest and most liquid capital markets in the world. We have a court system that, for the most part, like works quite well. We have strong respect for property rights. We're an excellent place to do business. There's a reason that like every innovative company essentially in the world is headquartered here. And when you think about like what Bitcoin needs to scale, I mean, think about it, right? Like, I think a lot of it is UI, a lot of it is, tech, a lot of it is sort of things that people are building on top of or leveraging the Bitcoin network that make it easier, simpler, cheaper, faster for human beings to plug into the network. And so I think it's like kind of a rate question, like the rate at which Bitcoin proliferates to, 2 billion, 3 billion users. I think it's just inarguably much faster if we can tap into those capital markets, if we can tap into, the sort of dynamism that is inherent in America. So it's not a question of like, does Bitcoin fail without state approval? It's instead a question of how do we orange pill the world and onboard the world as quickly as possible? And the answer to that question is certainly by, in part at least, maintaining a decent regulatory environment for the network in America. Maybe it all plays out the same over the long run, but in the long run, we're dead. So like, yeah, I think it's a speed question as much as anything. So I think the answer to your question is it's both. My sort of personal interest, yeah, I'm definitely a bit of a statist. I'm certainly not an anarchist. I'm not a libertarian, really. I think liberal democracy is like quite good. And my view is that Bitcoin is sort of like liberal democratic values enshrined in code. And so to me, like the extent to which the state, especially like America, diverges from the interests of Bitcoin, it's like a really useful for a barometer for the extent to which America has like departed from its charter promises, right? Like I think that if America is sort of doing the things that it set out to do, it's always going to be a good place for Bitcoin. And if it's not, it's a sort of canary in the coal mine that maybe we're shifting away from the ideals of the country.
I have one final question, and it's about how do you balance these values of Bitcoin and I guess the values of the state? What sort of position does BPI take on people like Ross?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ross Ulbricht is like kind of just a criminal justice question as much as anything. Like, does any human being deserve to have the sentence that he has for the crimes that he did? Like, no. So I think you can sort of answer the Ross question like in a much more sort of like nitty-gritty fashion, which is that it's a wildly disproportionate sentence and he doesn't deserve to be in prison. I think you can sort of say that without tackling maybe the meta question. But yeah, I mean, like BPI is not a libertarian organization. There are a lot of libertarians who write for us. There are also a lot of people who aren't libertarians who write for us. We've got Democrats who write for us. We've got Republicans who write for us. And we actually have a pretty sort of diverse set of viewpoints, which sounds like a sort of just like PR talking point, but it's kind of just true.
Well, that's more of like politically that is a correct diverse situation, right? You want, in my eyes,
diversity of ideas rather than just like appearance.
Yeah, exactly. You want these conflicting ideas in some cases, right? And you get to see what the overlap is, and most likely that's where the new, I guess, the new high quality ideas can spawn from, from some of those overlaps, because
I mean, my dreams
are important,
Yeah, one of my dreams for BPI is like that we get to the point, funding wise and sort of stability wise, that we can afford to like have Bitcoin critics on the payroll. Like, most Bitcoin critics are sort of bad, like it's just nonsense and drivel. But there are some like really smart people that have like, interesting critiques of Bitcoin. And it's like, if we're going to be like a proper think tank, like we need to be engaging with the best critics of Bitcoin head on, and having those.
I think
debates
all the best critics become Bitcoiners. All the best critics of Bitcoin become Bitcoiners. Like I remember, like or like you get. I mean, I don't think I'm necessarily one of the best critics of Bitcoin, but I remember when I was first getting into Bitcoin, is the like to be on a good path to orange pilling yourself is to be asking good critical questions and then working out why essentially Bitcoin passes that test. And like once you go through enough of them, you go, Maybe
Yeah,
it's not a
I mean,
scam. Like, if you're coming from the like nothing, because I never bought a shitcoin, right? If you think they're all scams, and then realize, hey, wait a second, this one's actually independently verifiably scarce.
Yeah. I mean, that's how David got into Bitcoin. I don't know if you know that story, but like when he was in college,
and then he went the other way, right? Like,
yeah. But like that aside, or notwithstanding, maybe. I mean, that was sort of his origin story. It was like he had a buddy in 2012, try to shill him on Bitcoin, and he was like, "This is retarded." And so David locked himself in his dorm room at Alabama for like a month trying to prove this guy wrong because he was like, "This is obviously a scam." And then a month later, he's like, "Fuck." Converts his life savings into Bitcoin and then buys Bitcoin Magazine from Vitalik. So I mean, I think a lot of people have that, a comparable origin story of like, if you come at this not from like the Hopium side, but you're like, this is dumb, I'm going to prove this wrong. If you're good at sort of research and thinking, there's a very high chance you'll wind up being like, oh shit, this is real.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the printed word, we're going to change gears here. We're going to take a look at something. You dropped a tweet today, and let's take a look at this tweet. I got to be honest. I've read. I guess you'd say like the magnum opus of Bitcoin books, right? That that we're kind of introduced to when you first come to Bitcoin, right? The Bitcoin Standard, Road to Serfdom, Hero with 1,000 Faces, and like this book list tends to get extensive. Now, without going and criticizing Atlas Shrugged, without going into all of this and criticizing it all, saw this tweet from you today, and usually don't take a second look, but in terms of books, but this one really caught my eye. So here we go. My friends released their book today. It's essential text on the moral arguments for and against Bitcoin, and this is why I stopped, because this looks interesting, and it's called Resistance Money, and it is the philosophical case for Bitcoin. And David, I just want to know, what are your thoughts on this? I believe that you do know the authors, and I'm guessing Bitcoin Policy Institute had some kind of influence on this work coming to life.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, the three authors are Andrew Bailey, Bradley Rettler, and Craig Warmke, each of whom are a philosophy professor at a different university. So Andrew is at Yale in US and Singapore. Bradley is at the University of Wyoming, and Craig is at Northern Illinois University. They've been writing about Bitcoin for a while, and were some of the first people I recruited to be fellows of the think tank when we started BPI. And this has been like a labor of love for them. They've been working on this book for years, and it's just incredible. It is probably the most clear-eyed piece of writing on Bitcoin, at least on sort of the positive and negative externalities, like to society, like the sort of, like I said, like sort of the moral arguments for and against Bitcoin. There's really nothing like this. And not to mention that I think it's the first sort of academic book that's been written about Bitcoin, like as in it's published by, an academic press as opposed to like BM books or something like that. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing that can go straight into, college and university courses. I don't know what else to say other than to say it's incredible. I think if you love Bitcoin and think you know everything about it, it's worth reading. And if you encounter somebody who has a strong moral objection to Bitcoin, this is almost just like the only thing you need to send them. Because these guys are like philosophers sort of first and Bitcoiners second. And so they do zero hand waving of, the arguments against Bitcoin. They're not just like repeating mantras that they saw somebody tweet. Like they take incredibly seriously, the best arguments against Bitcoin, and, they steelman them, and then they respond to them, among other things. And so I think that is like maybe the biggest differentiator between this book and a lot of other sort of pro Bitcoin pieces of content, where the latter are just principally concerned about like, it's more like propaganda. Like they just kind of want to beat you over the head with a foregone conclusion.
That's why I say Bitcoin books are a scam, like, because
they
mostly they are.
They mostly are. They're mostly stupid. I mean, like, there's like very few Bitcoin books that I've read that I think like, wow, this was sick. It's kind of like Andreas, like Aaron Van
Right, some people
Weerden
say
wrote a
mastering Bitcoin's not, but then Andreas is a scam, and so it's like,
A lot of it is mental
Yeah,
masturbation. So
for
sorry, keep
sure. I
going.
mean, yeah, for sure. I think this book's just like wholly unique in that it's kind of just like, all right, like let's do your worst in terms of arguing against Bitcoin, and let's respond and sort of see where this all winds up. So there's definitely a through line. Like, I mean, like you said, the subtitle is a philosophical case for Bitcoin, but that case is made possible and stronger by really clear-eyed thinking and grappling with questions that a lot of Bitcoiners don't like to talk about.
I'm you know what? I'm super excited to read it. Well, I should say listen to it because I'm an Audible. I'm an Audible convert at this point. I can only read short texts, so
wait, you
I'll
can
definitely
read, Phil?
I can read and write. Yeah, that's right. I can even spell. I know. Amazing feats of extreme sports, I guess. Anyways, all right. Look, David, if people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you? What is the best way?
I'm on Twitter at David Zell, ZELL_. And then my email is fine. It's dz@btcpolicy.org.
Absolutely awesome. All right, we are going to put that in the show notes, guys. This wraps up the Fireside Chat, and we are moving on over to REKT. That's right, the pet rock enjoyers' favorite time of the episode. We've got the Bitcoin Relo Triangle by CypherSafe.io. 16 ounces of solid titanium, beautiful craftsmanship. The Bitcoin Relo Triangle, only at CypherSafe.io. All right, everybody, for REKT, that's right. We've got some pretty REKT garbage for this week. Let's dive into it. Shout out actually to Dick Whitman for bringing this one to my attention. He originally tweeted the screenshot, and we had to obviously go see if it was real. And indeed, guys, indeed, if you may not know it, but something crazy happened today on the Bitcoin network. Let's dive into it from the second layer, pretend second layer, shitcoin, Stacks. We're experiencing a delay in Stacks block production due to unexpected mining behavior combined with a Bitcoin reorg. So apparently today, guys, we had a reorg. Core developers in the ecosystem are investigating the issue and working to resolve it as quickly as possible. Thank you for your patience and understanding. So I just want to point out, they're not talking about Bitcoin core developers here. They're talking about Stacks shitcoin developers. Okay? That's why specifically it's in the ecosystem. Anyways, did you know there was a reorg today? Were you aware that Bitcoin wasn't working? This is ridiculous. This is actually kind of part of the problem. We were talking about this today in Good Morning Bitcoin.
Can't you just report them to the SEC? Remember, Stacks is the one shitcoin that's actually a registered security, and so if they're lying publicly, and they have publicly traded stock, can they not get in trouble? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
But it's a good excuse for them, right, to be able to blame Bitcoin for their shitcoin problems. Oh, look, it's this base layer problem. It's like, no, that's not how your shitcoin works. When people go and buy your shitcoin, supposedly, right, they have to burn their Bitcoin, which means everything is just Stacks. Everything is just your shitcoin broken. Anyways, whatever. Stacks down bad. Speaking of down bad, if you were a Wu-Tang fan growing up, as I was, this was obviously incredibly disappointing. Saw this today. That's right, guys.
Decentralized peer-to-peer cash rules everything around me.
Yeah, man. Ghostface Killer. Look at this. Told y'all to tap in yesterday, ain't I? Woo is forever, and that's right. Rune.garbage.
Yeah, didn't they create the world's first NFT album or something? Wasn't that kind of the thing? Right? It was like this album for one person. Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure. I want to say like Jason Williams that like later bought it or tried to, or so. I don't know. Yeah, I swear there was like some. It was like some album they sold for like some silly amount, but there was only one copy. So like I don't know if they actually then released it as well, but like the.
I have no idea.
That's what I'm saying. It sounds like an NFT.
Yeah, it isn't. I mean, it's runes. It's just, it's just garbage. It's just garbage on subjective garbage on Bitcoin, because it's not, some people treasure their garbage and they think it's important. To each their own, but it's still garbage. Anyways, moving on. This is a really tough one for us, Walton. This one's tough because, like BTC
I know, they
Prague,
Affinity scammed us. Like,
yeah,
come on, Kuhash brothers. Like, you should do better than this.
Yeah, guys, you're ending up on REKT. This isn't fair because we had great conversations with you guys.
You're sponsoring REKT, and now you're the content of REKT.
Exactly.
Like, it's not a good look, guys.
Let's dive into it. So, tweet from Seed Signer, Bitcoin only conference, BTC Prague giving main stage time to see. This is the whole thing. We get it, right? There's tons of shitcoiners and they're sponsoring. You don't, but you don't have to give them that platform, that main stage. So if you ask me, that means somebody paid a lot. But that's just my opinion. Anyways, Shitcoin Casino Dace, I guess that's their take on Base, offering more than 100. Yeah, shitcoin currencies to trade. Bitcoin only is unfortunately just marketing speak here, and yeah, that's a tough one. And this is really, it's the problem is this, right? The VCs really are everywhere, and I understand that it's incredibly difficult to be discerning with who you take money from. The truth of the matter is that the more discerning you are, most likely the less people are, number one, willing to pay you, and obviously number two, the less you're most likely going to make in what it is that you're doing. So unfortunately, there is this very thin line where you are having to possibly take money from people that you don't necessarily want to, and also at the same time serving ends that you do want, right? Like, it's kind of using that bad money in order to create good. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. I'm just saying that is what happens. That is just what happens. I mean, to me, they probably shouldn't have been on the main stage, but that was just disappointing. Thoughts?
I mean, I have thoughts about runes. I have thoughts about runes and Ghostface Killa. This is like going to be a hot take, maybe. Yeah, get ready for this one. I think that you can be a libertarian / anarchist, or you can make sort of like harsh normative judgments about what people do with their time and money. It's very hard to be both. Yeah. I also think that there's something beautiful about runes compared to the shitcoins of 2017. I think it's like the most honest grift we've seen yet. Like, think about the shitcoins from 2017. The marketing was, this is going to be the next Bitcoin. Bitcoin's only $3,000. Like, you've already missed it. Like, we use, fucking fancy schmancy blockchains to fix Bitcoin. Like, it was utility this, it was people were sort of sold up a river thinking they were investing in the future of like finance. Mm-hmm. Now, 6 years later, how many years later, it's like, oh no, buy this because it's a picture of a fucking monkey or a dog or whatever, and it's a giant joke. And in some ways, I kind of like that it's just calling a spade a spade. Like, there's very little obfuscation about the nature of the activity. Whereas, like, on the one hand, if you're trying to sell somebody fucking Bitcoin Cash or Cardano or Chainlink, I mean, you're kind of telling a bunch of lies. Like, you're selling people a story about a business or an idea that's going to change the world. I don't think anybody's under any fucking delusion that when they buy a monkey JPEG, they're just going to the casino. And in some ways, like, there's something I like about the just raw honesty of like, we're at the point in the economy where some subset of people, want to just fucking gamble on shitcoins, and at least the shitcoins are calling themselves shitcoins. Like, essentially, like, there's no,
You mean now it's all meme coins?
Yeah, and like in some ways, like, I just kind of like that. I mean, I don't like, it's maybe a separate question from should they exist or not, but like to the extent that casinos exist and people like in some ways meme
Exactly.
coins just reduce the sort of like operating cost of a casino to essentially zero. And so like, you know, unless you're going to give like equal sort of mind share to your rage against the existence of like MGM, if people are fucking launching, you know, dog tokens and stuff and puppy tokens and stuff, like at least nobody is sending these people Bitcoin with the expectation that they're investing in something. Everyone knows that they're gambling. And I think there's something kind of beautiful about that.
This is where I have to push back just a bit, and it's because we know people that are in the space. So these people that you know that are doing this are just like, yeah, I know this is a scam, but I'm having fun. I totally have no problem with people who understand exactly what they are doing, right? There's no tragedy there, right? When a person knows what they're doing, hey, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
The problem is this that I've seen myself, okay? It's that I have seen some really shitty marketing, okay, where what happens is that it's implied that because this is on Bitcoin, it's going to be a form of store of value, which is where you're getting grifted for, like, you're essentially paying Bitcoin for dust, you know? So it's like, and to those people, right, like the people that do that, that's disingenuous. But to your point, right, I don't like, I'm of the mind that, hey, they're using the Bitcoin protocol. I may not agree with it, but this is what freedom is about, you know, like this is part of it, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, it's just entirely.
I don't know if that was really a pushback or a partial support. I don't know what that was.
No, I think it's just a caveat, right? No, it's a caveat. It's true, right? Like the moment in my mind this starts being really dark and predatory and bad is when like the promoters or like, you know, creators of these things are lying to you. And one really bad lie is because this is a Bitcoin shitcoin, it's got some property of Bitcoin that's going to give it value. But like my favorite of these, like I think there was literally a token a while back called like Ponzi token. And the white paper was essentially like, if you buy this, you will almost certainly lose all of your money. And I'm just like, yeah, like if you're fucking buying Ponzi coin,
Doge? Like, that's Doge, right?
Yeah, I think Doge may also like have something that I have no idea what the. It's just,
they said it was a joke from the start, right? Like, and then like other people, you know,
sort of just memed into it. Yeah, I mean, Doge is actually fairly decentralized. I mean, like compared to 99% of cryptocurrencies, like Dogecoin is certainly more decentralized than like Ethereum, than like Chainlink, than Ripple or any of that stuff. So no, I don't think it's pushback. I think it's just like a helpful caveat. It's like if everyone's calling a spade a spade, then you know, let people do what they're gonna do. It's just when you're lying to like, you know, financially vulnerable or like gullible people, that's when you sort of cross this like moral chasm in my mind, and like you're now a bad guy and you're doing bad shit. But if you're just sort of buying the like obvious meme and there's nobody sort of selling you up a river, then you know, I mean, it's maybe retarded, but it, you know, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, this is going to wrap up REKT, and we're going to move it on over to the Hopium.
The Hopium. Up next, we have Hopium, sponsored by BTC Pins. BTC Pins is the finest metal work found in Bitcoin outside of the, you know, the plates that you engrave your stuff into. BTC Pins, they make some cool stuff. Check it out. You see the Zeus pin here, the PlebUnderground pin, Ahmed getting the stones, and the honey badger. BTCpins.com. Use the code PlebUnderground for a discount on the goodies. That's the code PlebUnderground at BTCpins.com. Welcome back to Hopium, where I have a couple of things to report on. The first, apparently maybe we actually have an implementation of ARK. So ARK, my understanding, was announced last year, right, at the various conferences, as this magic solution to fix the inbound liquidity problem of operating Lightning node. And my understanding is the team forked, essentially. There are now two ARK implementations being built. This is one of them. I'm going to talk you through what they announced just today. Today being Friday the 14th. This episode comes out Monday 17th. How ARK works. You can redeem your Bitcoin on ARK at any time on-chain, ensuring you remain in control. ARK makes no compromises on self-custody. Instead of requiring users to manage their own liquidity, ARK offloads that burden entirely to ARK service providers. So these are a little bit like Lightning service providers, LSPs. ARK service providers are ASPs. Users simply need to turn up with a mobile wallet and they can start making Bitcoin transactions right away. ARK works on a UTXO model similar to Bitcoin. The off-chain virtual UTXOs are called VTXOs and settled in rounds. Unlike Bitcoin, there's no need for confirmations. VTXOs are final after each round. ARK is a decentralized decentralized network of trustless servers called ARK service providers. Users can connect to these ASPs with light wallets. Users can seamlessly transact with other users of the same ASP over ARK directly and transact with users of other ASPs over Lightning Network. So this sounds very similar to the current interoperability of eCash. Right, that you can have different eCash mints, and you can pay people within your same bank essentially directly, and if you want to transact with people in other banks, it gets settled through Lightning. So this is a similar sort of setup to this. The difference here being is that these are VTXOs rather than eCash notes. My understanding is with eCash is that you don't know if they're fractionally reserving this. My understanding with ARK is this can be shown that's not the case essentially, that this is a one-to-one. But I'll continue reading. It says ARK's ASP issue a VTXO upon a Bitcoin deposit. A VTXO is like a check with an expiration. Users make payments to each other by swapping these checks, and they can redeem the check on the blockchain anytime, even if the ASP goes offline or ceases to exist. This is, again, I think this is a little bit like Mercury. To ensure the immutability of transactions on ARK, VTXOs are periodically consolidated and settled on the Bitcoin blockchain. These settlements provide close to the same security guarantees as regular Bitcoin transactions. Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, so this is kind of like an adjacent type of implementation to eCash mints, right? Like you were just saying, it's similar but not the same.
Right.
So
kind of sits on top of Lightning.
Yeah.
Ish.
And I don't know, man. I don't know. A lot of these solutions, like, don't get me wrong, I think they're cool. Like I have what's it called installed there, the eNuts app and everything, and I do find them, useful, but in all fairness, anytime I use any of these, and I'm not trying to bash anybody working on this because this is how it works, right? We don't get to the thing unless we try different things, and I feel like this is in it. It's kind of like even like when Wallet of Satoshi came out, and there's all these people like, oh my god, Wallet of Satoshi, it's amazing, all this stuff, and this isn't it. It's not. And I feel this way about this as well. I think it's cool, right? I think it's cool. I think it's awesome, but I don't think this is it. What are your thoughts?
I mean, we'll find out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it doesn't. We'll find out. The market's going to dictate.
Right. Like, I think there's some work being done here, but they haven't like. I don't think it's completely finished. Right. Again, it's like this is the idea. I'm pleased that like this little group have funding to kind of work on it, but yeah, it's not finished yet. I'd like to share another article here from Alex B.
Nice, Bergalax.
Who says that modularity is a hot topic, and so he thought he'd offer a different angle that's more native to Bitcoin. We should prioritize interoperability over everything when designing future building blocks. eCash, Nostra, and Lightning give us this option. Now, I'm not going to read from the article, but essentially, he's bullish on the same things that I describe as being the comparison, like similar with ARK and eCash, is this idea of maybe there are kind of siloed units of liquidity in different systems on top of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's likely that that's how Bitcoin scales, but what is very important is that there is this continued interoperability, continued kind of settlement, but like that is actually, you know, Bitcoin Lightning, rather than it being on some sort of higher layer, or for you having to kind of peg out into a lower layer, because otherwise it's not gonna scale, right?
I mean, this is kind of why we say that Bitcoin is going to be the world's settlement layer, because this is exactly it, right? When you're building up like that, I actually, you know what? I mean, I can't disagree with that, because in my eyes, so this kind of goes back to the traditional banking system, right? Our current banking system, a lot of times Bitcoiners think like, oh, Bitcoin's here to dismantle the banking system. The problem isn't the banking system. The problem is the central bankers. The problem is the money printing, right? Like, this is what Bitcoin helps us solve. But in terms of a network design, right? Like layering these different services, this is correct, you know. So I kind of do see that, yes, there will be these siloed type of layered networks around Bitcoin that settle everything in Bitcoin, and of course the trade-off to those is going to be significantly more trust. Or I shouldn't say significantly, because I'm giving an inaccurate measurement there, but I would just say trust, right? Like, that's what's going to be there. You're going to have to trust those more.
I think you have to remember there's just trade-offs with different things, right? It's like with I'm still not using eCash, because yes, it can be fractionally reserved, and I don't really want to kind of have any sort of value in there for that reason. Is it a functional tool for private payments? I think so.
Yeah, I agree. Exactly.
But again, it's like I just see it as like the larger funds, the like lower layer you want them on, to some degree. It's like, I don't know, you're gonna have like your main stack on chain, and your, you know, the small and some fraction of it on Lightning. Maybe you then have a fraction of that then in eCash at some point for a period of time. I don't know, but I don't need it yet.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about it, right, each individual kind of has a layered approach anyways. You have, you know, let's say the majority of your stack in cold storage, right? You have a significantly, most likely smaller amount, right, on Lightning, in Lightning channels. You may have an even smaller amount that you have on a custodial hot wallet, or hopefully not custodial hot wallet, right? You could use something like Nunchuck, which is absolutely amazing, that Walton, you introduced me to, and that I freaking love. I think it's insane how good that wallet is.
Yeah, it's good.
I really do.
And it has no dependencies as well. Yeah. Like they've built everything.
These guys killed it. So, and again, that can be viewed as a layered solution. I would see it as layered, you know, but of course, you can make arguments for and against all that stuff anyways. So people personally are taking a layered solution, I would say.
Yeah, I think layers are good. We just need to make sure we have, you know, not too much friction between the layers, right?
Yes, exactly. And again, it's going to be trade-offs, right? Trade-offs are what are going to enable these different layers. Let's be honest. People want to pretend like they can have their, you know, have their cake and eat it too, but that just isn't reality.
Wait, so you're saying it's like layer cake, like don't get shot on the steps? Like,
that's right.
Yeah.
Always quick with the analogies. Always quick.
Oh, I had the layer cake before.
You're already there.
And I was thinking, oh, my hat's like the same color as the yellow on the front. Anyway, whatever.
All right, let's have cake.
Yeah, so anyway, this was Hopium, and yeah.
Sweet.
Thanks, Phil.
Awesome. All right, guys. That was it. Wraps up Hopium, as Walton said, and it wraps up this week's episode of Pleb Underground. Guys, don't forget to check us out on our audio-only platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. If you want to stream us sats, check us out on fountain.fm. Walton, how do we wrap this one up?
Fuckshitcoins.com. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you next week.
More toxic than the most toxic Bitcoin maxi ever. They said he's more